Hi, my name is Medina and welcome to my channel. If you click this video, it means that it's probably Mercury Retrograde and you want to know what it means. And I know that a lot of people are saying that it's scary and bad, and this is the purpose of my video. I want to let you know that it's not actually that scary and that I've been observing this topic for maybe over 7 years, and I've had a lot of experience with Mercury retrograde, and I did a lot of things just out of experiment during Mercury retrograde. So I hope by the end of this video you will have more information about Mercury retrograde and more navigation. It is actually not that scary as you think, and I'll tell you exactly what you can do to make it actually productive. I'm also gonna tell you that Mercury retrograde doesn't really affect everybody the same, and there are people that get affected by Mercury retrograde way more than the others, and I'm also going to explain what kind of people are affected by Mercury retrograde more than some other people. So if you follow the next rules that I'm going to explain to you, your Mercury retrograde is going to be totally fine. And these rules are actually applicable to everyday life. It's just during Mercury retrograde we forget about it, we get impulsive and we skip them, and that's why we make mistakes. First of all, avoid buying electronics if you know you want to buy it for a long period of time. If you are buying a phone just for a year, if you know you're gonna switch it, it is totally fine to buy. But if you are actually planning to buy something that you want to keep for a long time, avoid doing that. I had this problem when I applied for a new job, when I started the job and they gave me a computer. I ended up switching that computer because it was really laggy and it always needed some reparations. But if you, like me at that time, cannot escape buying electronics, if you really have to buy it, just make sure it will have insurance, that you can fix it or you can return it easily. So, some backup plan with that. Another thing is that I'm noticing every time there is Mercury retrograde is that cars are driving really stupidly and really, really bad. Like, there are a lot of accidents, there are a lot of rerouting of GPS for some reason. Again, happened to me this time. Right now is Mercury retrograde, by the way. GPS brought me to the route I've never been before, even though I've been going to the same dance class for a year. But this time GPS wanted to drive me through some weird neighborhoods to get back home. Third rule is being very, very careful with the documents, especially if that's some kind of contract, some big contract like lease, or some big contract like buying a house or a car, especially a car. So always look at some hidden points and always make your research, because it could be something that you think right now is right thing to do, but it is actually impulsive and you might not see some details. You might miss some important details in the contract. So be extra careful, and not every contract, not every document is going to be faulty, but you have to make sure you check everything, okay? And if you have to sign a big contract such as lease or buying a house because it's a time pressure item or something inevitable, just keep in mind that for some or the other reason, it might be a temporary decision. And it's not that bad actually. For example, my parents bought a house during that period, and I told them it's Mercury retrograde, something's gonna go wrong. This didn't stop them. They still bought a house, and now they lived there for maybe 3 years, and they're moving from that house. But the thing is, it's not because the house is bad, or it's not that something is wrong with that purchase, but it's just it happened naturally, and they ended up deciding moving to another city. And you shouldn't be scared too, because it could be something natural. I signed up for a rent in my apartment too when there was Mercury retrograde, and I ended up living there 1 year, but I always knew I'm gonna move out from that apartment, so it was a completely smooth experience for me. Same applies to the normal documents that you're working at for your work. Just save your progress and you will thank me later, because sometimes what usually happens is that you might be working on something and some internet outage happens and it's not saved. Thankfully right now technology is good enough to save the progress, but I would still save it if I can. And then a few details to pay attention to is shopping online. And I've had that happening to me last week again. I went to the store and I wanted to buy this new fragrance and I liked how it smelled. I went back home, decided to purchase it online, and I ended up getting a wrong version of this fragrance and I couldn't return it. So if you shop online, make sure that you check everything, like with documents, and you can return the item. So basically a recap of what should be done during Mercury retrograde is always checking your documents, always saving your documents. For example, on computer, if you're working on something, please don't be lazy to save it. You will thank yourself. It is also online shopping, being very careful. Being very, very careful on the roads, because people get confused on the roads. And don't buy electronics if you can. Or if you have to buy it, just make sure you have insurance or you can return it and fix it. Now to the point, what you can do during Mercury retrograde is that you can definitely start projects if they are temporary, or for example, it's another step to another project. That's totally fine to start. In fact, I started master's degree when it was Mercury retrograde, but I knew that in a year I'm gonna finish this, and believe me or not, the graduation happened on Mercury retrograde too, so it was like a cycle of Mercury retrograde. I can recall one thing really funny about my master's degree is that, you know, Mercury retrograde is about repetition sometimes, and it's about something retro, right? And my master's degree ended up being a copy-paste of my bachelor degrees, but like in 1 year. So I didn't learn anything new, but I knew I needed that step in my career. I did find good connections and I had a lot of fun during that program. But was it really helpful for my brain? I don't think so. But here's Mercury retrograde. I knew what I signed for. And this could be fine for you if you have something in your career formally that you have to accomplish and you don't care about revising something, then you can start it on Mercury retrograde and be really smooth. Or if your job has a lot of different project-based activities, it's totally fine to start new projects. Totally fine. Another thing that is really nice to do during Mercury retrograde is catching up with the things that you've already started, or even the things that you dropped for some reason. Say, for example, you started learning a new language long time ago. You can catch up to that and you will understand it even better during Mercury retrograde. And it's funny because you see the details that you didn't see during Mercury retrograde, and when you come back to something you couldn't understand, it actually ends up being even fun, way more simple than you overcomplicated in your brain. Really nice. So if you are a person who abandons hobbies, and you can easily go back and continue. Honestly, Mercury retrograde is a good time to correct and re-establish things. Sometimes you can actually go back to existing contracts and see something that you want to debate on, something you want to change in existing things, and you can do that on Mercury retrograde and you might have success with that. You also can follow up on your friends, especially It is very common when you meet your high school friends or friends from long time ago during Mercury retrograde. And it's funny because it suddenly will start popping up in your life, like all the people from the past are just starting popping up, and you start having fun with them, and you start understanding them, or having this nostalgic feelings. So basically, as you see, Mercury retrograde is a normal time. It's just people are being impulsive and are not doing their research as they should do every time. But during Mercury retrograde, it's really easy to skip the research, and that's not something you should do. Now, if you want to learn how Mercury retrograde personally affects you, you can look up the houses in Gemini of Virgo, and the house of Mercury is going to be affected too. So you can look up these houses, and these are going to be the houses where you can change something like in existing order. Say for example Virgo or Gemini in your third house, and during that time you can re-establish and examine closer the things of the third house, which are relationship with your siblings and neighbors. Like you could, if you are on bad terms with them, you can talk to them really nicely and be friends again. And now to the part who is going to be affected the most is obviously people who have strong Mercury in their natal chart. It could be some Gemini, some Virgos, people who have stelliums, which is a lot of planets in Virgo or Gemini, people who have very, very strong placed Mercury. So these people might be a little bit glitchy during Mercury retrograde. But it's totally fine because the world is gonna be glitchy because not everybody knows about these simple rules. So if you are Mercurian, don't be scared, just breathe and try not be impulsive, and everything is gonna be fine. So now, by the end of this video, I hope that you understand Mercury retrograde better, and I am going to write down some future dates of Mercury retrograde, but you can always Google, and now you will know what to do during this date in the future.